I've worked with a lot of amateur athletes over the years, and one thing they all have in common is they want simple solutions in the gym that are going to help them improve in their sport. Most people that I've worked with that want to improve their performance in a sport, either so they can play with their friends or so they can set some serious PBs, don't want to use overly complicated methods to improve their performance. You don't really want to be using methods that involve you taking up 10 pieces of kit while you're in a busy commercial gym, and you probably don't want to have to get halfway towards your own strength and conditioning degree just to be able to do the program. For that reason, I'm always looking for simple methods that help people improve their performance in the gym in a way that will then carry over to their performance in their sport without taking too much of their time, energy, or money. One method I really like for this is cluster set training. So today we're going to talk about what it is, why I think it's so useful, and how you can apply it to your own sessions. Before we get to that, if this is your first time on the channel, welcome. My name is Mike. I run this YouTube channel and a blog called Ready Steady Strong. I write regular articles covering such topics as motivation and goal setting, strength training, exercise demonstrations and guides, and program design. So you should check out the link to the website. I'll put that in the description below, and please subscribe and like the video, all that usual YouTube stuff. I will really appreciate that support. Let's get back to the topic. So cluster set training, quite simply, is just a method where you break up a set into smaller sets. So for example, if you had a set of 6 reps to do in the gym, you might break it up into 2 reps and then have 20 seconds rest, and then another 2 reps and then have 20 seconds rest, and then your last 2 reps. And there are lots of different ways that people break up their sets for cluster set training. That's just an example. But basically it means rather than doing one continuous set of repetitions, you have mini breaks between a couple of reps, what they call inter-repetition rest periods. So cluster set training just tends to be one of those methods that makes a lot of sense. When you think about what happens over the course of a set, we'll use this example of a set that goes on for 6 reps, you know that over the course of those 6 reps, fatigue is going to build up, our force production will start to drop, and the bar will start to move a little bit slower. What that means is that as the set progresses, your force production and your rate of force production is probably decreasing and your fatigue is increasing. Now, if you're someone that plays a sport and you're trying to fit in some strength and conditioning alongside that, and you also have a busy lifestyle where you maybe don't get enough time to recover and refuel as a professional athlete, for example, then those are all things that you should be pretty keen to avoid. It makes sense that if a training method is out there that helps us reduce the fatigue throughout a set and keep our force production and our kind of power output nice and high, then those are things that probably most athletes would benefit from in the gym. Now, that's not to say that cluster training is going to completely revolutionize strength training. It's not to say that it's massively superior to the normal straight sets that you might do in the gym, but I do think it gives you those small benefits that if you're someone with limited time in the gym to make improvements in your sport, and in particular in your force output, your speed, things like that, then I do think there are some very obvious reasons there to use cluster set training. When it comes to the studies that have been done on cluster set training, there are a lot of studies that show improvements in velocity and repetition. So velocity, they will show a high velocity in things like a counter movement jump, or velocity in the bar speed of, say, a bench press or a squat or things like that. And there have been some studies that show that people can perform extra repetitions as well. And as we said at the beginning, that just kind of makes sense. If you were to look at someone's set, let's say they're doing 6 reps at their 8 rep max, for example, you know that by the 6th rep, things will start to slow down. If you start inserting a couple of breaks into that, then yes, you more likely are going to see a faster bar speed all the way through, as you can imagine from your own training, and you could possibly squeeze out 1 or 2 more reps if you have a little bit more rest in between those reps as well. And that's beneficial for 2 reasons when it comes to training my own clients. Number 1, if I can give them something in their training that actually increases the velocity of the movements they're doing, then 9 times out of 10, for most of the sports that my clients train in, that's going to lead to some benefits in their performance if it transfers over to the sport. And also, it means that I might be able to get them to perform a similar number of reps or slightly more reps with slightly less fatigue induced as well. So if I know that they're seeing me and then they're heading back to work, and then that evening they're playing their sport, or the next day they're playing their sport, if I've used a method that has led to them not kind of fatiguing as much in the set, not slowing down as much in the set, hopefully that means they'll be a little bit fresher for the rest of their day and a little bit fresher when they go back to their sport. So how do you implement cluster set training in your training? You don't need any other equipment other than a phone or a stopwatch or something to time it with, and you just need the equipment that you are going to use for the exercise itself. Again, this is a very convenient tool to use in your training. It's very efficient, very straightforward. So all you need to do is choose your weight and the number of reps you're going to do, and then divide that set up into a smaller portion of reps. The example I used earlier was taking a 6 repetition set and turning it into 3 clusters of 2 reps, but there are other methods as well. I often use 2-2-1 for 5 reps, or 2 reps and 2 reps for a total of 4 reps. But really the idea is just that you are inserting breaks somewhere in that set before fatigue sets in. You can have a rest period between those reps, somewhere between say 15 and 45 seconds, and I will share some studies below that not only describe those different parameters that people use, but also show you some of the benefits that are being shown with cluster set training as well. Once you've decided on the parameters of your cluster set, it's time to do the exercise. I would recommend using cluster set training on exercises that don't involve a lot of setting up each time. So for example, I don't particularly like to use cluster sets on squats because I feel that the time it takes you to unrack the bar, step back with it, do your reps, then step back in, then take your break. I find there's a few too many steps there for cluster set training. The exercises that you can start and stop very easily are great for it. So deadlifts and pull-ups are 2 of my preferred exercises to use with cluster set training. Some people also like to use bench press. There are studies that use bench press. I guess it depends how quick you are at setting up and unracking, but it seems totally viable. As some of the benefits seem to be velocity related, it stands to reason that exercises like med ball throwing and jumping would also benefit from some cluster set work, but I don't think that has been very widely tested yet. The other obvious example for cluster set training is Olympic weightlifting, which already naturally comes with certain breaks between sets, especially if you're dropping the bar and then fully resetting for another lift if you're going from the floor or from blocks. But you could structure that a little bit more. You could add more deliberate breaks in between repetitions of your Olympic lifting as well. With all of that in mind, you have 2 options of how you choose your intensity with cluster set training. You could use cluster set training to squeeze out a couple more reps than you would normally get at a given weight. In that case, the last reps of your cluster sets are probably still going to look a little bit slower, a little bit grindier. But as I've mentioned, that's not really my preferred way to use cluster set training. I like to use cluster set training as a way of preserving freshness in the people that I train, because generally I know they're going to go away and train really hard in their sport. They're going to want to be fresh for that, and they're probably also managing fairly busy lives as well. So when I program cluster set training, what I'm looking for with my training is that people are getting to the last few clusters of their workload and the bar is still moving relatively smoothly. That's not to say that we want it to feel easy, but just they're able to still lift aggressively and have some good intent behind that lift. This approach works even better if you have access to some velocity testing equipment like GymAware. So if you've got that and you're using cluster set training as well, you can probably measure the speed of the bar there and preserve that speed a lot better. So in summary, cluster set training is super easy, super time and cost effective, and very straightforward to put into practice. It's especially beneficial if you need to stay fresh for other sporting practice, or if you're doing anything where your speed and power is important. Is it something that should completely take the place of traditional strength training? Probably not, but it is good if you are looking to stay fresher, or if you need to break through a plateau and try something a little bit different. Definitely, if you are someone who's interested in training for your sport, give cluster set training a try and see how you get on. If you have your own experiences with cluster set training, or you do try it and you want to let me know how it goes, feel free to add some comments below where you tell me what you think. And don't forget, if you would like to support the channel, please like and subscribe, share this video with your team members if you play a team sport, and I'll see you for the next video.